welcome to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transcendental Transformations. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, June 28th, 2022. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well. Well, it is already the end of June, and I can't believe it. It's the year's already half over. I honestly, I don't know where the time goes. I remember my family, and especially my mom, always saying, the older you get, the faster the time goes by, and I can't believe it's already halfway over. But it's summertime. I love this time. To me, it's my favorite time. Spring and summer are always my favorite time of year. I know for you northern people, it's the time to be outside, visit families, barbecue, pool, do all sorts of fun stuff. But for us Floridians, it's the opposite a lot of times. It's time for us to go inside because yes, it is very hot. As of May is probably March, April, May. For us is the absolute most beautiful time of the year. It's always about 80, 82 degrees. It's got a nice breeze. But during the summertime, it is, man, it is hot. I'm already feeling it. In my house, I've had the air conditioning down for this recording for like 2 hours, and it's only dropped 1 degree in my house. So yeah, that just goes to tell you how humid and how hot Florida gets. But anyways, everybody, what is your favorite thing about summer? You guys know I love to hear about your lives, and I thank you guys always for writing in and letting me know. But what's your favorite time? To me, it's I'm leaving for Chicago. Oh, I want to tell you, speaking of that, I am leaving for Chicago this upcoming month in July. I will be gone, so this will be the last recorded show until August. Yeah, it's always, I got to see my family. When you move away and you've been gone for over 20-something years and all your family's back in another area, when you're young, you start to, it's kind of like, all right, I'm free. I don't have to do anything. But then as the older you get, you just kind of want to go back and see your family. So it's going to be great to see my mom, great to see my sister, my nephew, and just lay around in the pool for a whole month. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, but I think I'll find something to do. So, all right, guys. Anyways, we are live as always on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, DLive, and all our replays. We are on every social media possible. So just hit our Facebook, Transcendental Transformation, and you'll see all in the About section, all the links of all the different social medias we are on for the replays, if that's your thing. So anyways, you can tell I'm excited because I have a very special guest today. I absolutely adore this guy. He is just, when I was reaching out for guests, we just connected. He's a very, very nice guy, and I just wanted him on the show because our guest today, Peter, he grew up a very shy kid, adjusting to multiple schools in multiple countries. As an adult, he worked as a high school and university teacher. He was an artist, a communications officer in the U.S. Navy in Germany, and an international organizational consultant. He is now an author and speaker and an online teacher and coach. His first book was a multiple award-winning memoir, King of Doubt, which is about his battle with imposter syndrome. His latest book, called Mindful Conversation, Speak Openly, Connect Deeply, Live Joyously, which is to be released on July 12th. And please help me welcome Peter to the show.
Thank you, Miss Raina. Delighted to be here with you.
Absolutely. So yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on. When we connected, there's just such an energy about you, and I absolutely love it. And just from our talking and our conversations, it was just something that I wanted to make sure you are, what you deal with is you deal with conversations, you deal with engaging conversations. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you got into this?
Sure, yeah. Well, as you said, I think it dates way, way back. I grew up as a shy kid. I sat on the bench a lot, and I didn't really like that. I wanted to be in the game. When I got in the game, then I fumbled the ball, so they put me back on the bench again. But ever since I was a kid, I knew that I wanted to express myself and I wanted to connect with other people, but I just couldn't quite figure out how to do it. I just didn't know. I think because I was so shy. And but the one good thing that I think I did really early on was I watched and listened to other people. What are they doing that's working, that's not working? How come I can't do that? It doesn't seem like it should be that hard. But it took me a lot of years to figure it out. But as I learned more and more, I realized that so many people are struggling with this. I'm not the, I thought, God, I'm the outsider. You know what you're doing. Everybody around here knows what they're doing, except for me. Well, that's simply not true. Most of us don't know what we're doing most of the time.
Exactly.
Hey, join the gang. Actually, if you're an outsider, then you're an insider because
Right.
we're all in the same boat together here. But I began to really study what is it that makes connection possible and what gets in the way. And when you start to understand that, it begins to simplify. And I just was very focused on wanting to accomplish that for myself. And so I worked at it. I worked at it a lot. And then I was very fortunate. I had some good mentors along the way. And then I actually spent 25 years of my life consulting to people on those topics, on how to connect. And I found I'd worked a lot with businesses, actually, both in this country and internationally. And I found the irony that the higher you go in organizations, often the worse the connections become.
Right?
It gets worse and
Yes,
worse. You were
yes.
pretty good a few years ago, and now look at you.
Peter, it's funny because, I don't think many of us, especially growing up, we have school and, there's the popular kids and there's the athletic kids, there's the music and there's the shy kids, the geeks, and, all these different categories that we're put in. And it really changes our perspective. And if you're shy, you look at people and you see all these outgoing people and and I think that's what is important is, and you said it, is like a lot of times we think, well, what are they doing that I'm not? What did they have that I don't? And it's not something that they have. It's just something that a lot of times people will tend to force themselves into those situations because they know what it can get them, attention or popularity or whatever. And so, but I think it's great because especially in a social media age nowadays where people don't connect, what do you see the biggest changes from the time when we were younger to the time now that social media seems to be everything?
Well, it is. Social media is everywhere, and our times, I think we're desperate for connection.
Mm.
I mean, if there are any buzzwords floating around, it's isolation. It's polarization. It's, we've been locked up for a couple of years inside, and you can't go out even if you want. But it's still the same basic things inside. Whether you're talking first face to face or over social media or what have you, it's about being authentic. It's about daring to express who you are. It's about listening in a lot of ways. I think one of the major things that disconnects us is we've lost so often the ability to really listen to somebody.
Yes.
Instead of listening, we're planning, well, what am I going to say next? Okay, you told a funny story. Let me see. How can I tell a funnier story than what you told or whatever? Or I'm trying to prove that I'm this or that or the other or whatever it is. And when we just slow down and really listen to who am I speaking to? Who are you? Then we start to connect in a very different kind of a way.
Yeah. But and that's the funny thing about it is I don't know how many conversations we have, and we listen to respond, because I see and even when I watch people and observe people, I watch them have conversations, and the moment something's said, I see that formulating in the other person's head, and they're just waiting, and from that point on, the brain is shut down.
Yeah, it is. You're no longer listening.
Yeah.
You're listening. Who are you listening to? You're listening to yourself,
Yes.
your own inner chatter. That's who you're talking to. You're not talking to me anymore.
Yeah, but and that's our ego. Our ego is, and that's because we're trying to feel important. We're trying to find something within ourselves, and it's funny because connection is something that is a part of the human experience. The human experience says, well, I feel I need to connect, but it's greater than just connecting to to other people. It's a connection to self too. Would you not say that too?
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually think that there are three levels that we need to connect on. The first is to the person you're talking to. You and I are talking, and I want to connect with you.
Yeah.
But the second is clearly to yourself, and it's all that chatter. That's what I call the second conversation, or the me conversation. You're really talking to yourself, and that's important. That happened. You can't turn your mind off, but you need to modulate it, and you need to know where should my awareness be right
Yes.
now. And the third level I think that we're really connecting with is what I call the me us conversation. And that's how I connect to our common humanity, to our common experience. And we're all coming from the same place. And people use lots of different words for this. Some people call it nature or the Tao or transcendental transformation or God or, whatever term works for you.
Yes.
But we're not in a competition. It's
No.
not like, how can I beat you? It's how can I join with you? And when we come from that place, then we can really connect in a deeper place. So there are these three connections. One is connecting to yourself, the me conversation. Then there's the me you conversation, connecting with whomever we're talking with, and then the me us conversation.
I think that's so important for people to understand is that, but we do feel a competition. I mean, think about it. If you really think about what we're prepped for, we're not prepped for self. We're prepped for school and to get a job. We go to school to learn all these different subjects, and it is a competition to a lot of people who can get the grades, who can't. If you're in sports, it's all about. I grew up in sports, so I was softball, flag football, so a swimmer, and so that's drilled into your head. Competition, win, 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 win. And I think that we carry that on because we don't learn about self and how to, and see ourselves as equals instead of trying to beat each other. Then we take that out into our adulthood. We go after it, and all our life becomes about, I need to win because I need to be successful. And at the end of my life, I want to say, well, I had this, I had that, and I got this.
Yeah. Well, that's so true. I often say that, almost the biggest conspiracy in life is that we never studied about that in school.
Yeah.
And yet it's the most important thing you need to learn. You learn a lot of other stuff, and not to diminish that, but if you don't get this one, you're out there, you're just not grounded in who you are. And just understanding that and realizing that, the competition is something that exists in the world for sure, not to deny that. But if that's what you think the whole game is all about, then I'm sorry, you're missing the boat. And we want to get you back on the boat.
Right. Who throw out that life preserver and get you back on?
Yeah, that's right. Throw out that life preserver. Yeah.
But Peter, and I think we have a problem. You said something about being our authentic self, and that is very important. But we don't know ourselves if we're not listening to other people or ourselves. Because guaranteed, if you're not listening to somebody else, you're not listening to yourself. And I think that's what trips us up, is because we're so busy chasing these ideas of success and romantic relationships and all these things that society tells us we have to have by a certain age, that it's impossible for us to be authentic when we've spent our whole life being something that society teaches us. So how do we learn to express who we are if we don't know our authentic self?
Well, that's a great question and a deep question. So if you've got a few weeks, let's talk about it.
I have all the time in the world.
All right, then here we go. I think it begins with the practice of awareness. If you're not aware of what's going on inside you, you're never going to know who you are. You can't. And so it's why I think that any kind of real change in life requires two levels. There's always the inner struggle and the outer struggle, and they're both important. You need them both.
Yes.
But the outer one is obvious. It's in your face all the time. So you most people see that and they get seduced by that. Oh, it's about this new car I want, or this new house, or this new relationship, or this new job, or this new whatever it is. But it starts on the inside. It has to start on the inside. And I think the place where it really needs to start is awareness. And when you tune your awareness into simply how you're feeling. How am I feeling right now? Well, I'm feeling really nervous. Oh, really? Well, why is that? What's going on? What are you nervous about? and you start to understand what is control, what that inner story that you're telling yourself is, what's that's all about. And then you realize that what's interesting is that the inner story, we wrote our story. And
Yes.
so we can change our story, and you change your story, you change your life. That's the one thing that you have an enormous amount of control over. But it takes a lot of discipline and focus and patience and courage and all of that. But I believe it's doable. I know it's doable because I've worked so hard on it, and I know you have.
Yeah.
And I think the people who find out who they are, you have to put time and energy into that. It doesn't just happen magically. But it's a struggle. I don't mean to diminish that at all. It takes a lot of attention and focus and courage.
It does, but in a society, especially in American society, we want the quick fix, Peter.
Yeah.
We want the pill. We don't
Give me
want
the pill. Give me the pill.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I've only got a minute. Give me the pill.
It's funny because I was teaching a class this past weekend at this event that I went to, and for the most part, it went well. But I was talking about emotions and why we're dictated by them, and the moment I start talking about we have to take responsibility and start looking at ourselves, you saw some people just tune out. It was like nope, and I had two people get up and walk out. The moment I said, "Well, we got to take responsibility for ourselves, turn ourselves inward, and start facing this," and it was like boom. And this was a spiritual event. This was supposed to be about a consciousness and spirituality and growing and understanding, peace and love, all that stuff. And it's just funny because no matter, and I think this is the biggest struggle, is no matter what our belief system is, no matter where we come from, it's the hardest thing to look at self. I mean, to become self-aware or self-actualized is to look at self and say, you know what, I did this. Like, I need to take responsibility because I was maybe insecure in grade school, so I shied away. That's why I didn't have any friends. I didn't know how to do this, so I did this to block off. And even now in adulthood, how many times do people say, oh, well, I'm awkward, I don't have this, but actually you're stopping yourself from doing this because you're not willing to look inward at yourself.
Yeah, and it's so sad because I think in a lot of ways it's that first step that's so hard. It's admitting, okay, I don't know it all. I blew it yesterday, or whatever. But if you get on that journey, the reward is so enormous. It is gigantic. You become who you really are. And there's no better pleasure in life. It's there for you, but you have to grab it. You have to take it. And like I say, it's just, you have to take that responsibility. This is my job. And if I don't do it, nobody else really cares whether I do it or not.
True, absolutely.
So you can blunder along all you want for the rest of your life. And, but that's not going to get you very far. But it's a magical, wondrous, awesome journey when you're willing to take that first step.
I absolutely agree, Peter. But Peter, we are going to take a break, and everybody, we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and if you're just joining us, Peter, I am absolutely loving this conversation. One of the things that we were talking about before the break was you mentioned something, and I thought this was very intriguing to me, was your 3 levels, and I guess it's in your book, Mindful Conversation. You talked about having 3 levels, a personal, a self, and a me and us, and I think that's really important for people to understand. Can you go into those a little bit deeper for us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, when you hear the word conversation, most people immediately think of a talk like what you and I are doing right now. We're talking. We're two people and we're talking. And that's incredibly important. And that's what most people focus on, and understandably so. And that's what I call the me-you conversation. I'm always a participant in my conversations, and there's somebody else, maybe one person or two or five or whatever. That's the me-you conversation. And there's a lot about that we can do to make that work better. But if that's all you focus on, you're really missing some huge levers here that you can pull. And so perhaps the little less, well, for sure, the less talked about parts of this are what I call the second conversation, or the me conversation. And this is the chatter that goes on inside my head when you and I are talking. And this is like what we talked about before. Maybe as we're talking, I'm telling myself a story. Oh God, I meant to talk. I meant to say this, and I said that. Oh, that's terrible. Oh no. Oh, I've blown it already. And so it goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
So many of us give ourselves constant negative messages. I mean, constant. I'm going to a party and I'm thinking, oh, I don't know anybody there. Who am I going to talk to? What am I going to say? And so I go in feeling stressed, and I'm already, I can't be my best self because this chatter, this story that I'm telling myself is undermining me. So we need to get a handle on that. Not that we can turn it off. I mean, our minds are made to think.
Yes.
So you can't just say, stop thinking. It won't work.
That doesn't work?
Well, I hate to tell you this. I know this is a surprise. I got some bad news to tell you.
Yeah. No. I've been trying to do that for years at night, and my head just starts going.
Yeah, you certainly can influence it enormously. Yeah. But you can't turn it off. We all do it. Everybody does. I don't care who you are. We all do it. So that's the me, the internal chatter, and that unfortunately, depending upon what kind of stories you're telling yourself, influences enormously how you show up in the world. What that message that you're giving yourself is, that influences you broadcast that, not intentionally, but unintentionally to the world. So that's sort of the second level, is what I call the me conversation. And then the third, again, is the me-us, which is a little more abstract, harder sometimes for people to put their arms around, but really important. And it's about whether I think we're in this together, whether I relate to our common humanity, our common struggles, how much we have in common, what the life force, or whether I see myself as sort of distinct and in competition with all of these other people, whether I know you or don't know you, like you or don't like you. It's just it's a win-lose game, and I got to win. And if I'm going to win, you're going to lose. And once you're playing that game, then you're really in. That's a whole different ball game, and you can't win it. And you're cutting yourself off from the enormous source of energy that we all have together. So I like to think of those three levels, and in my classes and book, I talk about how you can really use those three levels to support you rather than hinder you.
I absolutely love that, Peter. I really do. It is, it breaks it down very simple for people to understand, because it's true. There is a me-you conversation like we're having. Then there's a me where we're always in our head. And for some of us, like we were just joking around, it never shuts off. And depending on how you value yourself, how you look at yourself, is dependent on how much chatter. And it's true, because our chatter is based upon our perception of life and our perception of self. And so if we're trying, and this is why I think a lot of people view humanity as something to be afraid of, or why we view crowds as something. And someone who used to have anxiety and agoraphobia and things like that, claustrophobia, like I used to fear going out because I was hurt in my childhood. I suffered a lot of abuse, a lot of bullying. I was constantly in violence, and so to me, my association to people was violence. Well, what are you going to do to me? You look happy, but you can turn and snap and change, right? Even if you weren't in that, we still, because of the media, the way the media poses and paints the picture, and the wars and how we fight over politics, we view other people as toxic and harmful. And I think that's why I think we've become a society where it's all me, and the chatter inside our house is trying to prove ourselves or trying to boost ourselves, is because of this view of how we view humanity.
Hmm. Yeah, that's well put. And so often, I think those stories come from when we were really, really little.
Yeah.
You didn't know it. You were basically taking it in, and if you were abused or neglected or handled in whatever way didn't work, that sort of becomes who you are. And as we grow a little bit older and become more you start at such a young age trying to protect yourself, and it's not the way to go. It's just, but it's understandable because that's what's deeply in there. So it takes work, it takes focus, it takes courage to change that. But again, the good news is it can be changed. It can be. You can change. You wrote the story and you can change it. I just believe that so deeply.
No,
But
absolutely, and I agree with you.
yeah.
But I think that's what's so important about these levels, is because yes, we could see a me, and we could say all these things. Like I could say, well, this happened to me, and I'm afraid. But the
Mm.
me us takes it to that another level and says, well,
Mm-hmm.
well, how? Okay, well, yes, this has happened to me, but now I'm projecting this in life, and this is how I'm relating to society. And because
Yeah.
this is my perception, how I choose to relate to other people, now this is creating this idea that I have to, as you put it, win, lose, or I have to outdo somebody else, and this causes me to either overact and be over egotistical, or shut down completely and just fear the world and lock myself in a box. But one of the things that, I was adopted, and my biological mom, the dad was out of the picture the moment he heard she was pregnant, and my biological mom was on drugs, and I was a drug baby. But when I
Mm.
was born, I was never touched for the first like 7-8 months.
Oh.
And so touch
Mm.
and that type of communication is hard for a lot of people. And even, and I think this comes down the line too, because conversation is not just verbal. Would you agree that
Oh,
it
absolutely.
can also be body language and touch, and how we, yeah.
Hugely so. Yes, absolutely. In fact, I often think that the bigger, stronger, most impactful messages are nonverbal. Somebody says, "Hey, how are you? Glad to see you." You say, "Oh, yeah, it's delightful to see you too." I mean, if you don't get, well, people can't see.
That's how you
Sorry,
said hi to me
it
this
doesn't
morning.
doesn't work when you're on audio only. But people are constantly. The words may say one thing, but the body language says something
Yes.
totally different.
Yes.
And so when I teach in my classes, when you're listening, you need to listen at various levels. And two of them are verbal and nonverbal, what's spoken and what's not spoken. And often, excuse me, the not spoken is the more sincere message, because it's we can pick our words and sort of sound like, well, I think I want to sound happy or sad or whatever.
Yeah.
But the nonverbals, they usually don't lie. They
Yes.
really don't. And also the nonverbals can be such enormous healers. I find, I know one of the things that I like to focus on, a lot of people talk about being triggered in conversations.
Yes.
Someone says something and, oh, it just sets you off. And it happens so fast that you're not even kind of aware that it's happened until it's too late.
Yes.
You said or done whatever, you've blown it.
Yeah.
That relationship is over, or not necessarily over, but it may be over. And so getting a handle on that, and again, that's about really tuning in deeply to yourself, understanding those triggers, and building in silence and building in. I often find that it's the nonverbals that can break through that triggering better than the verbals. The verbals, okay, I've heard all that before.
Yeah.
But if you, sometimes it's just a simple touch. That's
Yes.
all, like on the shoulder, just a little touch. And it starts to communicate in a totally different way. So we hugely need to pay attention to the nonverbal and the verbal. Yeah.
We all have triggers. I mean, that's the way the brain works.
Sure.
We all have
Totally,
some type of
totally.
association, right? And I have
Absolutely.
family members that get triggered very easily. You say the slightest thing, you look at them the slight, and right away, boom, they're off to the races. And many people that I know are like that. And I work in a field with emotion, and you have to sometimes be careful of what you say, because our society tells you, well, you can't say this, you can't do this, and so everything now is a trigger. And so what I think is helpful is kind of what you say is the nonverbal communication, because it doesn't matter if you're uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with touch. Still to this day, I'll be honest with you, I don't like being hugged. It's because, yeah, we know on a psychological level, babies that aren't touched have trouble later in life with this. And still, no matter how much I try to hug people, it still makes me uncomfortable. But
Sure.
when I know that someone is not hearing something on a verbal level, sometimes just putting your hand on them or just sitting next to them and bumping them or something like that changes the aspect, and they look at you and they realize that somebody cares. And I think that's just as important. And I'm so glad you said that about the nonverbal message.
Yeah, and absolutely, and you're right. I mean, I think touch is a very sensitive issue, and you need to be really careful with it. But even just a smile or making eye contact. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to communicate non-verbally. I'm happy to be with you. I care about you. I want to understand what you're saying.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a huge part of the game.
It is. And your book, what the first thing that says is speak openly. And to me, I perceive that as be open and honest about yourself and with your words. Not just use your words to slice and dice and try to, outdo each other, but, be open and honest. And I remember a long time ago, because I was born in Chicago, raised up, and we're all gang infested, tough. Chicagoans are tough. We got that old gangster style. You don't show or act your emotions. We care. We're very respectful, but it's just the same. And I had to learn to open that up. And so what I started doing was opening up on blogs at first. I started blogging, and when the blogging first came out, and I started being open, and people were like, I got two responses like, wow, you really put that online? You really said that? And other people were like, wow, because you were so open, I don't fear that as much. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is that fear. It's like, how do you perceive your words? We lie all the time because we're afraid of the judgment from others. We're afraid that it's going to hurt us in some way or affect us in some way. But we don't realize, I think, the power and the freedom of being open and honest and speaking openly, as you put it, brings us.
Absolutely. I think we're learning more and more that sure, we fear these things, but when we speak authentically, it connects us.
Yes.
It just does, because other people, I think, resonate. They recognize they're playing those games too.
Yes.
And when you speak openly to me, I can speak back openly to you, and I like it better. It's more fun. I feel connected. But again, you got to jump. You have to take that leap of faith, and whatever with what person or what form, like if blogging helps you to do that, I say go for it. Whatever it is, or find the person you can speak to, or journal, or whatever it is that helps you to really open up. When you're being authentic and when you're playing the game. If you look inside yourself at all, you know that.
Yeah.
And just experiment with being a little bit more. You don't have to reveal your deepest, darkest secret to everybody. Of course not.
You don't have to do that. I better
you
start
don't
taking
know.
some
I'll give you a break today.
start taking some blogs down.
But just experiment with something, a step that feels a little bit of a stretch, but not too much of a stretch. That's kind of where to start, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what, I mean, as we've been talking throughout this whole show so far, it is connection. And when you open up, you realize that these things they're not afraid. They're words or they're past experiences that once happened. And I think that's the mindset that has to switch. Is we're so afraid because, hey, I was bullied. I don't know if you were, Peter, when you were young, but I was like, the way we grew up, it was constant. And so when I was young, I was afraid to speak. And I look back and see how many times I stopped myself from saying something or doing something because I was afraid of that judgment. I was afraid to get laughed at. And if I failed, then, it was going to be more, now I dive right into it. I'm like, all right, hey, let's like jumping out of an airplane. Let's go, and it's empowering. And people ask me, and I'm sure they ask you, is how did you get there? Like, how do you go from being so scared to say things and be communicated with people and connect with people to where you're at now?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd say baby steps. Did you ever know the movie What About Bob?
Yeah, I love that
concept of baby steps. You can't do it all at once, and if you particularly, this is way back in your childhood. It's deeply in there, that fear. So give yourself a break. Be compassionate with yourself, but push yourself a little bit, enough. Not over the mountain, so you're just going to fall off the cliff. To mix my metaphors, but take a step, and I think it's a reinforcing cycle. If you take a little step and you say, "Hey, that wasn't so bad. You didn't spit in my face. I didn't die. In fact, I think we connected more, and I like that. Oh, I think I'll try that again." And so it starts to build on itself. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the more you realize how you can do it successfully, what's your mode, what I want to communicate, what I don't. And you have a right to keep things private if that's what you prefer. But I mean, vulnerability, I think, is a big word these days. Being vulnerable, allowing yourself, hey, I'm not perfect. Oh, big surprise. You're not perfect? Really?
That's an eye-opener for a lot of people, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, of course you're not. But yet, once you say, I'm not perfect, oh, well, I'm not either. Hey, maybe we got something in common here. We can, let's go. It takes courage. It takes practice. It takes patience. And I think just being compassionate with yourself, it doesn't work the first time, that's okay. You're not perfect.
But I think that's the mindset that we have to get out of, is that, yes, we aren't perfect. And to feel vulnerable, a lot of people equate vulnerability with weakness. And that's not it at all. That's completely the opposite. If anything, vulnerability builds your strength.
Absolutely.
And it's like going to the gym. Before I got very ill and I used to work out at the gym all the time, ride my bike, and people would always be like, oh, you look really good. How, and I'm like, well, you can too. All you got to do. and it's like, yeah, well, yeah. And then the excuses start to come. Well, I don't have time. I got this going on. I got this. Well, so did I. I had a lot of stuff. And I think that's what's important about what you say is, yes, we take baby steps. We push ourselves, just a little bit at a time. You don't have to eat the whole cake at once, so to speak. But if you start learning, it's like I told people going to the gym too. Go to the gym. You don't have to start lifting and bench pressing and doing all these crazy things. Go start out on the treadmill. Walk, for the first few weeks, and then speed up a little bit. Then try a little bit of light weights, and then start mixing. And then slowly you start to build. And that's the same thing, because our brain works in patterns. And the way we call them habits, and the way we retrain something is by redoing something. Just like the muscles of the body, you have to retrain your brain to do something different.
Yeah. I love what you said about vulnerability is strength.
Yes.
We think about being vulnerable. That's weak. Oh, I don't want to show you that I'm weak. It's not. It takes great strength to be vulnerable, to show your parts of you that you're not so sure about.
Absolutely. Peter, I hate to interrupt you, but we are going to go to a break, and everybody, we will be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and if you're just joining us, we have the awesome Peter Gibb with us. And Peter, I am absolutely loving this conversation.
Me too.
One of the things that I noticed when I was, after we got talking, reading about your stuff, your website, everything, is, you had a memoir called The King of Doubts, and you were talking about imposter syndrome, and I just thought that was very interesting. It caught my eye. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Imposter syndrome, I think, is something that probably a lot of people suffer from and don't even know that it exists.
Mm.
In fact, I didn't know. When I wrote King of Doubt, I didn't even know the term imposter syndrome. And then I said, somebody pointed that out to me, and I said, wow, I wrote a book about that, and I didn't even know it existed. So imposter syndrome is basically the psychological pattern of no matter what you do, how successful you are, how skilled, how talented, whatever, it's never enough. So if you get to position one, you say, oh, position one, that's nothing. I want to be in two. You get to two, oh, that's nothing. I want to be in three. And so it's an absolute, it's an emptyless, it's a bottomless pit. You can't win that game. You have to start accepting yourself for who you are, where you are, and then you can move on to whatever it is you aspire to. That's great. But I looking back on my life, I kept, I had some nice successes, but I always felt like, oh my God, they're going to discover I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a total fake. And once you discover that, then you're really going to be, you're going to wash me off the face of the globe, because I've been fooling you all this time. And so the story that I was telling myself was, I don't know, I'm a fake, I'm no good, and maybe you don't know it right now, but in an hour from now or a week from now, you're going to realize it. And every boss I had the same experience with. I mean, I usually got along pretty well with my bosses, but I thought, that's because you don't know who I am. You don't know what's going on, really. I don't have a clue what I'm doing here. And it's a terrible thing to live with, because it undermines everything, no matter how well you do. And one of the ironies is that many of the most successful people in life, people you think, wow, so and so. I mean, the example that come to mind are someone like Tom Hanks, absolutely top of the film industry. And he apparently has suffered enormously from imposter syndrome. So it's not about talent. It's not about success. It's not about achievement. It's not about any of those things. It's about self-image, how you see yourself, how you hold yourself, and your inability to accept that what you're doing, hey, maybe it's good and maybe you can do more. But what you're doing right now is okay, and you're okay. And anyway, that's the essence of imposter syndrome. And it's a curse.
I think that would have a lot to do with the way our society is built, and especially your parents and your school and how you're raised and how your experiences. Because I know that if people are pushing you all the time and you get good grades and you do all this stuff, yes, you could still have self-image issues, you can still have self-worth issues, but our society tells you. I mean, I knew from a young age, like, there's this whole thing that you have to do, and I'm sure you're aware of that as well, that there's just this idea that's out there that you have to be like, men have a certain goal and objectives that they have to have as responsible for men, and women have to, and so you have this idea that you have to be something, you have to go out there, you have to do this, but you have all this schooling, but then again, it reflects on you, because because education or knowledge is not wisdom, and I think that's where we falter, because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but that doesn't mean you're wise. And I think that's where you have to play and understand, as somebody who's working on self and trying to evolve with self, is, okay, well, if I'm dealing with imposter syndrome, it's because I may have the knowledge, but I don't have the knowledge of myself. And so how do I factor in to this idea that I'm chasing, compared to the ideas that I have in my head. And I think that's something where we have to play and look at, because you said Tom Hanks was somebody who's, yes, is a very successful actor, a very great actor, but if he suffers from this, then what is the underlying cause? Because we know that from an outside perspective, his skills as an actor are good, but I think this goes deeper than what we're doing.
Clearly. It's about the internal, not the You may be, I don't care who you are, what success you've had.
Yeah.
It's never enough. It's never, ever, ever enough. And so it just, it's an endless cycle that you're on. It's a treadmill, and you just never get off it. Is
this different than somebody who's egotistical, who I got to have the Ferrari, now I got to have the Ferrari too, and is that different, like from like an egotistical point, or is it more from like an insecurity, self-worth point?
Well, I think it's in how you express it. You can express your lack of self-esteem by buying the next Ferrari. I've got to have the bigger, better.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it. Or you can express your lack of self-esteem by retreating into the closet and saying, I'm never going out. Yeah. It's kind of the same. Often it's the same root cause. You don't feel good about yourself.
Yes.
You don't value yourself, and so you do whatever your thing is to try to overcompensate for that. Neither way really serves you. And you have to deal with that root problem if you're going to get over it, or you're going to be with that your whole life. And that's one way to live, but it's not the way I want to live. I can tell you that much.
No, absolutely not. But that's the way most of us live. I mean, as we've discussed throughout this show, it's most of us are chasing things. We're chasing ideas. We're chasing love. We're chasing self-esteem. Yeah. We're chasing self-worth, and we put it in the form of money, success, business. Social media I would not be on social media if it wasn't for business. I don't like it. But my friends even got me on TikTok now, and all they're like, you got to go on this. If you want to be seen, you got to do this.
Right.
And my head just my head just spins sometimes, because I'm like, how am I going to keep up with all?
I know. And as soon as you got there, then the next new social media comes along.
Yes,
There'll always be a new TikTok, So you're never going to catch up. It's not possible.
It's funny because I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else. And again, I'm using my own experiences, and maybe others can relate, maybe others can't. But when I was younger and I was without, I felt the need to be somebody and chase things. I felt the need to, I needed to get stuff. I needed to be this. I needed to prove myself to my parents, all this stuff. When I found myself and became within, the need to want to do stuff. I mean, I still want to help the world and help people, but it's completely different now. It's not like this, I want to change the whole world. Now it's like, okay, I'm good. And if no one wants to learn, hey, I'm good. I'll live my life the way I need. And it changes the perspective. And it's funny because, I think that's really what it's about is, you talked about earlier about self-actualization, self-awareness, these things. And this imposter syndrome, I think, ties in with everything, with our conversation, with everything, because like you said, how you present yourself to the world is really how you're seeing yourself inside. And if we're going to lie to people, well, then we're lying to ourselves. If we're trying to be something to the world, then we're trying to be something to ourselves. So it's really that self-reflection that's going on at a constant rate.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great story because I mean, the game, the inside game, that's where you win or lose, really, inside. It's not out there. I don't care how many cars or houses or whatever you have. You can't just chase the next thing. Yeah. And you can't win until you have really learned to who you are and to accept who you are and be that person. Yeah. And it's the amazing thing is that once you do that, then that changes the game board.
Yeah.
And then that's when life becomes fun. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but for me, wow, the moment that I discovered that, I mean, in one way it sounds almost obvious, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's a mystery, but it's so true. Yeah. And when you can accept that, the game changes. And I think a lot of it is about living in the moment. Not living for what I'm going to do tomorrow or the next week or this thing I'm going to get or achieve, but just this moment. I can live in this moment, make this moment the best I can be. It's going to work. It's just going
Well,
to be
how
hard.
can we live in the moment? We've been told our whole lives that you need to think about the future. You need to plan for the future. Something's going to happen to you in the future, and you got to be
Yeah.
ready for it. I mean, that's what life makes you. In Florida, we have hurricane season, and you feel the stress of all the people. And I'm always prepared ahead of time. I got my gas. I got everything I need, hurricane supplies, because I don't want to be. But at the same time, in my personal life, yes, I live for this moment because, hey, in 30
Yeah.
seconds I may not be here. There's no
Sure.
guarantee of what's going on.
Nobody knows.
but
Yeah.
but we don't think about that. Especially when we're young, we think, oh, I got all the time in the world, I don't want to think about any of this. And then life happens, and then before you know it, you're 70 something years old. You're like, what happened? And
Yeah. Where to go?
and there's this I hear all the time, I don't read spiritual books or anything like that, but there's the book The Power of Now, and we hear about this living in the moment, being in the now, doing all this other stuff. But how do we change really quick before we, because we have to sign out pretty soon, how do we shift our mindset? If our conversation in our head is always in the future, how can we start shifting our conversation to be in the now?
Well, I think it's it goes back to awareness of the moment and appreciating what happens. Like, I'm really enjoying talking to you because I am really here.
Yes,
I'm
me
with
too.
you.
Me
I'm
too.
not thinking about what I'm going to do an hour from now. I'm just here with you. And when I start to appreciate that and realize how much richer that makes my life, that encourages me to do that more and more and more. So I think it's experimenting. It's not easy because, as you say, we have been taught you ought to be you're always thinking about what's next and what's coming, but we have to move on beyond that and try it. I guess what I'd say, try it, see what happens. If it doesn't work, well, then that's not right.
Yes.
But it works for me. I can tell you that much.
And I think that's the important thing is that depending on who we are and what we're willing to work on, it's not the fact that your stuff doesn't work or somebody else's stuff doesn't work. It's the fact that, are you willing to work on it? Are you willing to put yourself in that position to be able to evolve from that? And so, like, there's a lot of smart people, including yourself, that have these powerful, techniques and tools to be able to help change your life. But I think that's the thing is are you willing to put in the effort for you to be able to evolve from that? And I think a lot of people just want that magic pill.
Yeah, amen. I mean, you're not going to find that magic bullet, but if that's what you want, well, go look for it. And if you find it, let the rest of us know.
Right. That fountain of youth that we used to have, right?
Yeah, it's got to be out there somewhere, but no one's found it yet. So good luck.
All right, Peter. Peter, honestly, I wish that we could go for another hour because I'm having such a fabulous time, but our time is coming to an end. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have anything any emails or websites or anything that you'd like to give out for the people that are watching?
Sure, yeah. You can connect with me. My website is petergibb.org, petergibb.org. Go there and you'll find all about the things I'm doing. My email, please feel free to contact me, is peter@petergibb.org. And my book is out, and I'd love for you to check that out. If you want, it's on Amazon and bookstores. Mindful Conversation, Speak Openly, Connect Deeply, Live Joyously, and King of Doubt also. And I teach a class, online class. Will be starting in September. So go to the website and you can read all about that. I also have a little assessment on there. If you're interested, you can take it. It's a 10-minute assessment. Find out how you're doing in terms of mindful conversation. Been wonderful to be with you, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Perfect, Peter. Again, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody, that is our show, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. YouTube is the same. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for the newsletter to receive VIP access and hitting guest shows and little surprises from our guests. Also, if you have any questions, email me at transcendentaltransformations, that's plural, @gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.